Hi there, my name's Ray. I'm the head of developer relations at 8base, and today I'm going to walk you through how to extend your 8base GraphQL API with ChatGPT. Let's get started. So before I walk you through the code, let's get started with what is ChatGPT. Well, GPT is a neural network machine learning model that's trained using internet data to generate text. What does that even mean? Well, back before Google, there was this thing called Ask Jeeves. And Ask Jeeves was kind of like one of the first search engines with this whole idea of this guy Jeeves, who was a butler, and you could ask him any questions and get any answers. GPT is kind of like a hyped up version of Jeeves. It's like if Jeeves was your butler and you were a spoiled kid who didn't want to do any of your homework. GPT has the capability to generate any type of text based on what it's learned from basically the entire internet. So you don't just have to ask GPT factual questions and get answers that it scrapes from the internet. You can ask GPT to create things. It can create memes. It can create jokes. You can have it create code. People are even using it to do their homework, create essays and answer their math homework. So GPT has this capability to basically take everything it's learned from the internet and create very accurate and very creative answers to the things that you ask it to do. And it can do anything textual. Now, OpenAI, the company behind GPT, has 4 different models: GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3, and recently GPT-4. Now, there's also ChatGPT, which is a smaller version of GPT-3. GPT-3 was created using 175 billion parameters, and ChatGPT focused more on conversational parameters with about 20 billion parameters. Today, we're going to leverage the ChatGPT model in order to add some capability of GPT into your 8base GraphQL API. And we're going to do this by creating a custom resolver. Now, the first thing you're going to need in order to connect to the OpenAI APIs is you're going to need an OpenAI account, and you're going to need to generate an API key. And then you're going to have to put that into 8base. So start by going to platform.openai.com. If you don't have an account with OpenAI, create one. Once you've done that and you're on the overview page here, you can go up to the top right, click on your icon up here, and then click View API Keys. Here you'll see a list of your API keys. If you don't already have one, click Create New Key, and it's going to generate a key for you to use. Now, it's important to copy this key right away because this is the only time you're ever going to see it. You're never going to be able to see this key again. So hit this button to copy it to your clipboard, and maybe put it in a document or something really quick so you don't lose it. Once you have that API key, you're going to go over to your 8base console, and from your home, you're going to go into Settings, and then you're going to go to Environment Variables. Now, this is where you put the environment variables that your custom functions use. So here you can see that I've already created an OpenAPI_key environment variable, and I've already put the value in. So you just put in a name of the value of the environment variable that you want. OpenAPI_key_2. You paste in the value here, click on Add, and then that environment variable is going to be available to your custom functions to use later on. Now, for my example here, I'm using a sports management app. And let's say in my sports management app, I wanted to give users the ability to ask sports related questions. Let's say I just wanted a cool thing on the side where they could ask a question about sports and get an answer. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use our 8base CLI, and I'm going to create a custom resolver. So I'll say, that was interesting. Let's try this. 8base generate resolver. And I'm going to call this Ask Sports Questions. Okay, now we see over in our resolvers here, we have this new Ask Sports Questions. And if we take a look at our schema right away, you can see that the CLI generates this default result, which is result, and this default foo right here. So we're going to change this, and we're going to say that the result is going to be called the answer, and the parameter that comes into our query is going to be the question. Now, looking over at the code, I'm going to get rid of kind of all of this header commenting here, and that's where we can start. Now, the next thing that I need to do is I need to import the library that's going to help me actually talk to OpenAI. So from my command line, I'm going to say npm install OpenAI. And OpenAI is the npm package that allows us to access the OpenAI APIs and the ChatGPT APIs. So after I have that installed, the next thing that I want to do is I want to import the libraries that I actually need from OpenAI. So I need to import a configuration object because this is what I'm going to use to pass our OpenAI configuration. And I'm also going to import the OpenAI API object. Finally, the last thing I need to do is I need to actually get our OpenAPI key from our environment. So what I'll do is I'll say const, and I've called the OpenAPI, the OpenAI key, OpenAPI underscore key in my environment equals process.env. So here I'm looking at the process.env object, and I'm taking the OpenAPI underscore key variable from it. The next thing that I want to do is I want to actually instantiate my OpenAI. So I'm going to create a variable OpenAI, and this is going to use the OpenAI API constructor. And in that constructor, I'm going to pass in a new configuration object. And as the parameter to that configuration constructor, I want to pass in an object that has the API key, which is the OpenAPI key value that I got from the environment variable. So here with our result, I'm going to change this to be answer because I know that's what we've decided it to be. And our event here, I need to change foo to actually be question. Now, in our actual result here, what I can do is I can say, I want to get the result of calling asynchronously. So I'm going to say await OpenAI dot create chat completion. And the way create chat completion works is I need to pass in a couple of things. First of all, I need to pass in the model that I want to use. So the model that I'm going to use is actually going to be GPT-3.5-turbo. And that's the ChatGPT model that we're using for this. And then I want to pass a message to this model. And this message is an array of objects, but I only need to pass in one object. It takes a role. And here the role is going to be our quote unquote user. And then it takes the content. And the content that we want is we want it to be the question from our event data. So now that I've created this and it's going to go out to the OpenAI API and create a chat completion, what I want to do is I want to return the answer of that back. So here it's going to return data. Data is going to be an answer. And then the answer here, we can actually set to just be result.data.choices, which is, this is the structure of what comes back from the OpenAI API. So .data.choices, our first choice, because we only passed in one message, so we're only really getting one answer back here. And then we want the message and the content. So the content of our message. Let's see here, string or undefined is not assignable to type string. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually wrap this so that we know that something is going to come back. So I'm wrapping this in string interpolation. So if this comes back as undefined, then we're just going to get an empty string back. So I'm going to save this. And the next thing that I want to do is I actually want to test this locally. So to test that, I can actually use our 8-base CLI. Now, the first thing I need to do is I need to actually create an environment variable that's going to use our OpenAI API that we created previously. Now, I've already done this. If you could see, if I do an echo, I named it OpenAPI underscore key. You can see that my key is right here. If you still need to do this step, you say export OpenAPI underscore key equals, and then you put your key right in there, hit enter, and your environment variable will be created. Once we do that, we can do an 8-base invoke local. Oh, wait. So first what we have to do is we have to update our mock because our mock right now just has foo and bar. We actually want to put a question in here. And let's have a sports question. So let's say our question is, how many teams are in the NHL? So that'll be our question. Our body can be the same thing. So here we have question. How many teams are in the NHL? So this is our mock data, so that when we run invoke local, we say invoke local, we give the name, which our name, if we remember, is ask sports questions. Oh, get that out of there. Our name is ask sports questions. And then we're going to provide a -m, which is our mock. And the name of our mock, as you can see right here, is request. So we could say -m request and hit enter. You can see we're invoking locally. And here we go. So our result is an answer that says there are 31 teams in the NHL. So it successfully went out to the OpenAI API, grabbed an answer to the question that we provided, and sent it back. Now we can just do an 8-base deploy like this. We wait for our 8-base for our function to actually deploy to our GraphQL API. There we go. So we have it deployed. And now if we go back into our console here, we can go into our API Explorer and we can look and we can actually see we now have this Ask Sports Questions. And here we can provide a question. So let's say our question now is, how many teams are in the NBA? So that's our new question. And we also want to get the answer back. We hit the button right here. Oh, we need to get rid of this games list. We don't need to see that. And let's hit it again. How many teams are in the NBA? See, it says there are currently 30 teams in the NBA. So there we go. We've successfully implemented ChatGPT into our GraphQL API. So our front end can now connect to our GraphQL API and still leverage the awesome power of GPT. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Head over to community.8base.com to ask me any questions, or any of our engineers any questions, or any of our 8base community any questions. Head over to docs.8base.com for more information, and we'll see you in the next video.